is a warning. It may be the last thing you hear. But I'm the last thing you'll see.
Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. Let's talk about Grimm. Yeah, I know usually when I do these kind of Rainbow Six lore videos, I try to make it sound cool, kind of like what I do with the Dead by Daylight ones, but much like the Dead by Daylight ones, when I come across the lore that is actually awful, you know what? Look, Grimm is a character we've discussed already in one of my previous Rainbow Six Cringe entries, and if you watch that video, you already have a pretty good idea of how awful his lore is, but it actually turns out there was more to this clown than I originally thought, so let's go over all this again. Alright, Grimm's real name is Charlie Tho King Boon. He grew up in Jurong, Singapore. He spent some of his time with his father in the wilderness, and most of the rest of his time with his beekeeping mother. One day, when a random thug appeared and tried to threaten his mother, he, and I'm not making this up, attacked the thug, who was twice his size by the way, using tactics he learned from the bees to strike at weak points in the head, which ended up hospitalizing and then killing the man, the thug that attacked them. I'm going to repeat that. He attacked a thug twice his size by hitting him at key points in the head, a tactic he learned from bees, which ended up killing the assailant. A few problems with that. One, so the thug was twice your height, but you still managed to strike his head in specific weak spots that you somehow knew about to kill him. Two, you learned this tactic from bees. So do bees tend to use their fists and kicks to attack weak spots on the head? That's odd, because I assumed they swarmed their prey as a group and stung them, but hey, you know what? I'm not a bee expert. Three, how often do you watch bees attack people to learn this tactic? And how do you apply this tactic in combat? Like, were you sitting there and one day you just started seeing people pass by and you saw bees attack people and you just started taking notes and then you somehow applied this to your own style of fighting? As a kid, mind you? Four, what was the thug doing there, pray tell? I mean, if your mom is just a beekeeper, I doubt she makes a lot of money off that. But again, I don't know how lucrative the beekeeping business is. Look, I know this is a nitpick, but that just seems convenient that this dude just shows up. Five, you killed him. The thug was twice your size, but you struck him hard enough in specific weak spots in the head, where are those by the way, to kill him. Really? Okay, you know, I could spend all day on how silly this portion of his lore is, and I'm not making this up. This is in his psych report in his lore, but let's move on. Okay, moving on. That's a hilariously stupid piece of lore, but we got to keep going. At the age of 18, he began his military career, being accepted in the NDU, Singapore's elite unit, and from there he was admitted into various other schools and squads, demonstrating time and time again his skills and tactical brilliance, all of which I'm sure he learned from bees as well. And eventually, B-Man here entertained the attention of Kali, who brought him into Nighthaven. Now, apparently this guy has an incredibly antisocial personality and sees others as tools to be used, so not even human. Okay, cool. But he also works well with Osa. In fact, sharing detective novels with each other. So, he's antisocial. His psych report goes into great detail about how he has a disconnect from other people. He puts up walls between himself and other people because he just sees people as tools to be used. He's very sociopathic. But he and Osa hit it off all right. I mean, that makes sense. She is a Mary Sue. Okay, everyone likes a Mary Sue. Moving on. He also didn't invent his gadget. You know how each operator has their own gadget? He didn't invent it. Osa made it for him. And as you would expect from this Bifu master, it is bee-themed. Because of course it is. And if that's where the goofiness ended, it wouldn't be too bad. But guess what, guys? It gets worse. It turns out that in a short video that I already covered in my previous video, that Nighthaven base was infiltrated by Sam Fisher and Nock from Rainbow Six. Nock and Grimm engage in hand-to-hand combat, where Nock eventually escaped with information they needed on Nighthaven. Grimm is then given orders by Kali to investigate Nock and find out her real identity. So, how does he do it? Keep in mind, Grimm is trained by various elite units. He is a secret service individual. This kind of guy is supposed to be good at espionage, combat, like all these things. He's supposed to be an expert, a professional in the field. So how does he seek out Nock's real identity? Torture, death threats, and violence. Of course. I mean, he obviously learned that from bees too. What, did you think this guy was subtle? He learned how to kill people from bees! Yes, he essentially does research on people who may be connected to Nock, tortures or threatens them into giving him information, then enters Nock's home where they get into another fight. Nock wins again! I'm starting to think this guy isn't that good at fighting. The bees need to take him back into the bee dojo known as the Hive and re-educate this man on bee tactics, and then demands to know what he wants. So what does Grimm and Nighthaven want from her? Simple. He reveals he has intel on who she is and says he'll make it go public if they ever go after Nighthaven again, so they need to leave Nighthaven alone. Scathing. I mean, I don't know why they would. Rainbow already got the intel they wanted. They broke into your base, stole your shit, and then made off with it. So why go after you again when they have all they need? Isn't that like having your home robbed and telling the thieves you'll call the cops if they try to rob you after the fact? Okay. But anyway, regardless, Grimm's lore, if you couldn't tell, is a joke. From his hilariously dumb upbringing as a bee kung fu kid, having his gadget made for him by his colleague rather than having it, you know, something unique to him, something that he developed or orchestrated, and then having it be about bees again, to him being about as subtle as a train wreck in terms of how he operates. To be perfectly honest, I don't even know how he became an operator. I mean, his file constantly says, oh, he didn't join this group and then this group, and he was really good in this group. Sure he was, but all I know about him is he learned combat tactics from bees. Okay. So it's pretty clear he's a joke of an operator. But is he any good? Let's talk about his gadget. Grimm's gadget is the Kawan Hive launcher. It has 5 canisters that can be fired. When the canisters that are fired stick to a surface, they will unleash a small swarm of hovering microbots that act like bees. And let's just not even bother calling them microbots anymore, microchips or whatever. Let's just call them bees. That's what they are. If an operator steps into the swarm of bees, the bees will latch onto them, giving away their location to all attacking operators. The swarm lasts for about 16 seconds, but they will continue to tail an operator who leaves the swarm for an extra 4 seconds. Now, the Hive can be countered by mute jammers, which will deactivate any swarms near its radius, and it is admittedly a decent way to get a read on enemy locations and pairs well with operators like Lion, Dokkaebi, or Jackal. I do admittedly like this gadget when near the objective zone because I think it can be used to hunt down operators pretty well. I also think it's a good way to get an operator who is in cover to start moving to get away from the canister, which can open you up to an easy way to get them, which is again why they pair well with characters like Lion, who require characters to stay still. So Grimm can work well with them. The problem with it is he is firing a canister to make this work, so it's not always a guarantee that someone will pass through it. So, tit for tat.
The diffuser. Come on, Truck you up.
Now, in terms of his guns, kind of interesting. Our boy Grimm carries 2 primary weapons and 2 secondary weapons. All of them are weapons we've talked about before. First up is the SG-CQB shotgun. It's a shotgun that we talked about with Lion, carried by a majority of the GI Gen operators, actually. It's a pretty strong shotgun with good range and powerful damage output per shell, making it devastating in short to mid-range engagements. It also has a relatively fast pump cycle. The problem is it has a low ammo reserve, meaning you'll burn through ammo quick if you spam it, but it is pretty useful.
Hive set. What's that? Locked on target. Target acquired. one high set.
Next is the 5.52 Commando Assault Rifle, a gun we discussed in the IQ video. It has excellent range and is optimal at mid to long range engagements. It has high damage per shot, making it an excellent gun for peeking, but it is less useful in close range due to a low rate of fire and a jumpy recoil. Overall though, given the gadget that Grim uses, it's probably the better option of the two primaries. Now for secondaries, he carries the P229 handgun. We discussed this handgun in the Hibana video. It has a very strong damage output and rapid rate of fire with a good recoil. It's actually excellent in close situations. The only problem with it is that it has a relatively low ammo capacity, but then again, that's not a big deal. If it can do that much damage, you might not need all the ammo. It's pretty negligible if the shooter is skilled enough, so I definitely go with this sidearm.
The longer you train, the sharper you get.
And then finally, the Bailiff 410 handgun. We already talked about this gun with Maestro. Essentially, it's a handgun with the power of a shotgun. It only has 5 shots before needing to be reloaded, meaning it can run through ammo mighty fast. Its strongest attribute is its tight hip-fire ability and the rapid-fire nature of its use. The downside is it has lower damage per shot than a normal shotgun. The spread of pellets means that even a shot aimed at the head may not result in a kill, and it has a relatively slow reload speed. Between the Bailiff and the P229, it's pretty clear which one I prefer. The best way to use Grim, in my opinion, is to move near the objective with a partner. Find a buddy to follow around with and just stay close to them. Once you get near the objective zone, fire canisters into the room. I would fire 1 or 2 into the room in different areas or into different corners. If you're with a hard breacher, get them to open a hole for you to fire through that and wait for the enemy to be detected. Then start picking them off. Put some of your canisters near exits too, so that if they try to slip out and flank you, you get a warning from the bees that let you know that they're coming. Work with Lion and Jackal as well to make sure that opponents are more easily found and killed. Because Grim's whole game plan is to force the survivors to move or avoid his bees to flush them out and allow your teammates to take him down. So how do I feel about Grim overall? So his gadget is pretty useful and his guns are, they're okay. They're fine. I don't have too much against his guns or his gadget. It's the guy's lore and design that just make me want to cackle. He looks so weird with that Crocodile Dundee style hat he's got going on. And his lore, like I said, is a complete joke. Everything about it just makes me want to laugh. From his childhood of being the bee kung fu kid, all the way up to being so antisocial with everyone except Osa, who he somehow gets along with, all the way to his full operator capabilities being right down to just thug tactics of torture, blackmail, and death threats. Genuinely, I have nothing else to say about this guy other than Grim is a joke. An absolute joke. And you know what the best part about it all is? If we just taken away Grim, keep the gadget, keep the weapons, all that's fine, but just put in a really hot Singapore woman and call her Queen Bee. That's all you had to do. Call her Queen. That's all you had to do. You could have made this cool thing about her being a queen and, like she's shooting these canisters in and launching her hives. That would have been so cool. What the heck does Grim have to do with bees other than a silly little backstory that makes absolutely no sense? I'm up in here writing better lore. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's Grim, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.